Live in the CNN Newsroom, Heidi Collins.
In about 90 minutes, President Obama will be talking to the nation's school kids. The White House was hoping to quiet critics by releasing the transcript of his remarks. That posting on the White House website has drawn a mixed reaction. A lot of people are still critical of the speech. Others say they're now comfortable that the message is not political. Among the main talking points, the president will stress the importance of education and encourage kids to stay in school. He will also tell students, don't let failures define you. The president's message is just the beginning of this conversation because there are so many things to talk about on the subject of education. Some new public service announcements, which you are seeing for the first time right here on CNN, are challenging people to help initiate change in our public schools. Take a look.
I may only be a kid, but I'm already helping the government plan for the future.
Did you know that many states use third grade reading exams to predict future prison growth?
And that more than 1 million kids drop out of school before high school each year? And that these kids are 8 times more likely to end up in prison? It's true. 60% of America's prison inmates never finished high school. And now many states are spending more money on prisons and less on public education. That's the bell. I better get back instead.
Isn't it time we ended the school-to-prison pipeline? We can do better.
Sam Chaltain is the national director of the Forum for Education and Democracy, one of the organizations behind those new ads, and author of American Schools, The Art of Creating a Democratic Learning Community. Sam's joining us now to talk a little bit more about what this campaign hopes to accomplish. So what is that, Sam? Rethink Learning Now. What's it supposed to do?
Well, first of all, good morning, Heidi, and thanks for having me. The objective of the campaign is really to spark a national conversation about what we need to do together in order to finally fulfill the promise 55 years late, first laid out in Brown versus Board of Education, to ensure that every child in this country receives the same opportunity to a high-quality public education. I think what makes our campaign different is that a lot of times what ends up happening with the best of intentions is folks inside Washington put together a fully developed plan and then try to get the rest of the country to buy into their vision. What we're doing instead is we're providing a partially painted canvas to the nation. We're saying there's 3 pillars that we think we should be focusing on: learning, teaching, and fairness. And we can do better, and we know more than we think we do. So we're asking the nation to share stories about their most powerful personal experience in a learning community, to describe their most effective teacher and what was it about that person that made them so effective, and to think with us about what needs to happen in order to finally ensure the fairness that's laid out in our founding documents and that should be the birthright of every American child.
Yeah, in fact, you know, when you look at the PSA that we showed here, some people would say, wow, that's just a bunch of scare tactics for kids and their parents. But we should probably show another one here that maybe isn't quite as scary. Take a look.
The commissioner is making his way to the podium.
With the first pick in this year's teacher's draft, Margon Middle School selects Todd Becerra, science teacher from Columbus, Ohio.
Well, no surprise here. Every school in the country was hoping to nab Nocera. He's a veteran teacher who demands the best from his students and brings his subject to life.
Congratulations.
Obviously, no matter how you look at it, the ads are pretty extreme, clearly trying to get people's attention. Why this route instead of focusing on maybe some smaller change or a series of changes that might be easier to accomplish?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say it's an either-or. I mean, with that last piece, we're not suggesting that President Obama needs to call for a teacher's draft. But what we are doing is looking at the phenomenon that has become the NFL draft, this event in and of itself, but also an example of how the NFL does a pretty good job of ensuring equity. The Pittsburgh Steelers won the Super Bowl. They get the last pick of the best college players. The Detroit Lions went 0-16. They get the first. And the opposite is currently true in public education. We have sometimes some of the least experienced teachers. I myself was one when I first started teaching in New York City, in front of some of the kids with the greatest needs. that doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is at least initiate a conversation that can run right up until the next reauthorization of federal education policy and think together, how do we move from a culture of testing to a culture of learning?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we certainly don't pay our teachers anywhere near what the NFL pays its players, so that would probably be a very big incentive, too. Before we let you go, Sam, what role do parents play in all of this?
Well, I think parent involvement is something that's always stressed and often misunderstood. First of all, public education is the closest thing to a silver bullet that we have in this country. It's the only institution that reaches 90% of every succeeding generation of Americans, that's governed by public authority, and that was founded with the explicit mission of preparing all kids to be active and responsible citizens in a democracy. And that work of using public education as a springboard to greater opportunity in the American dream begins in the home with parents. What I'd like to see schools doing more often, though, is recognizing that there are a lot of different stages of parent involvement. We all want to fill the auditorium on Tuesday night when we ask parents to come in.
Yep.
But the first step of parent involvement is making sure that your child is fed and gets to school on time, ready to learn.
Certainly.
And the more that we can begin there and start to think about how to work more productively with parents, I think the better we'll be in the end.
Yeah, we certainly all hope that parents can be as involved as they possibly can for their kids making their way through school. Sam Chaltrain, we certainly appreciate your time, the Director of Forum for Education and Democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.